And we're back, and you're watching Second Cinema, and our guest today is Craig Gilmore. He is a storyboard artist and pre-visual artist, and we really are glad to have you here. Thanks so much for coming, Craig.
Thanks for having me.
So you're in an industry and in a business that a lot of kids would say, wow, he does this kind of stuff. And when you think storyboard artist, you think comic books. And initially, that's how you got your start.
Right, that's correct. Started in the early 90s in comic books, actually as an assistant to a comic book artist that lived in Mebane. And he had a studio in Hillsborough, so I was doing little things for him, backgrounds. He was kind of showing me the ropes of what happens inside comic book industry. And eventually we formed a studio called Artemis Studios, and it was a co-op studio of let's see, it was 8 comic book artists. And we were all working for Marvel and DC Comics. And my first big job for comics was Justice League of America, actually international for DC Comics. And I was doing ink work for that, and then eventually got my first drawing work for Marvel Comics, drawing Morbius, the living vampire, and that was one of my favorite characters as a kid. So, you know, he kind of sprung from Spider-Man books, and so I was really excited about that.
So you yourself were a big comic book fan as a kid, like most boys are.
Exactly.
And is that how you kind of got into the business yourself?
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I just always loved just drawing in general, and you know, I went to a 2-year college, Alamance Community College, and went through their commercial art program, and decided that I wanted to pursue my illustration love. And comics, although there wasn't a lot of work in North Carolina per se, it was, you know, in New York and things. That was the outlet that I could pursue that would let me draw all the time, and so that's how I got into comics.
Now, you don't do only comics; you also do film and television. And being that you're a storyboard artist and also a pre-visual artist, can you explain to our audience what the difference is and what that actually means as far as your industry?
Pre-visual is just it's a way in pre-production to cut down on cost. Storyboard is really considered part of that. It's you know, where you get the script and I'll break it down into drawings. Also, animatics are another way, a part of pre-visualization. It helps the directors work on timing and, you know, cutting the scenes up and the flow of the story. So.
You were talking earlier with me when we were off air about some of the projects you've worked on, One Tree Hill, Surface, and we were talking about One Tree Hill because the episode that you actually worked on, I actually worked on. I was an actor in that episode in last season, the finale. And when you think about it, all the elements that actually go into creating an episode of television or a film, people don't see how much really goes into it.
Right.
As far as what you do as a storyboard artist, is you're creating each individual segment so that it can be seen by the producers, directors, everybody?
Right. It's strictly for internal use for the rest of the crew. It goes out to the directors, it goes to the producers, the special effects team, any props, you know, that need to be designed, I'll need to draw those out. For One Tree Hill, that didn't, you know, they don't necessarily need a lot of, you know, props and special effects stuff, but occasionally they do, you know, they do need that type of work. So.
What do you prefer more than anything, since you've been in all 3 mediums?
Yeah, I prefer storyboards over anything, and it's just my love of storytelling in general, and yeah, it's just amazing.
What about as far as doing film, television, or video work?
I think film is probably my favorite.
Why is that?
Because you're not as limited to what you can do. I know a lot of times when I work in the video games or even TV, you know, well, not so much TV, but you know, sometimes you have to think about the budget and what you can pull off, you know, and what I draw out has to fit within those boundaries. But with films, most of the time they have a pretty large budget, unless it's an independent film, and then I do have to, you know, go by some guidelines, you know.
Well, we're in an industry here in North Carolina where independent filmmaking is huge.
Right.
So the work here in North Carolina is not small. There is a lot of work in this state. So how do you as a storyboard artist make a good living? Because the budgets are usually smaller with independent filmmaking.
Right.
Can you make a good living doing what you do living here?
You can make a living. It's with my work, I kind of started Film Shots as an umbrella that encompasses all the things that I've done in my career, which is also animation, 2D, 3D animation, all this kind of stuff. So when there isn't storyboard work, I can usually go somewhere else. Even in advertising agencies, they use a lot of storyboards for presentation, for pitch materials, all this kind of stuff. So when one part of the business is down, the other ones usually pick up.
So it's good to have skills in all areas.
Yeah.
Good to have skills in all areas, people. Very good idea.
Right.
Never hurts to increase that resume. Now, your business is Film Shot Studios.
That's correct.
Film Shot Studios. And this is an area that covers all of these things that we've been talking about.
Right.
So another question to ask you is about rejection. In this industry, we do see a lot of rejection, and it's normal, and you try to get used to it. What about in your field? Is that something common?
Yeah, you have to build up a pretty tough skin. I mean, especially starting out, you will get a lot of doors closed on you, but I always tell people that ask me, how do I do what you do? And you really have to have a tough skin and just get used to the criticisms and turn those into positives. Listen to what people say and improve on those things. So, that's...
Increase your skills on your resume.
That's right.
We talk about that a lot, is that the more skills you have, the better, because you can cross over into advertising, you can cross over into film and television and the video games. Now, you were talking about a recent project you were working on when we were talking before. Explain a little bit about that.
Last year I got a call in South Carolina. They were shooting a film called The Strangers, which starred Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman. And they just wrapped on that, I believe, last month. And it was Brian Bertino is a first-time director, and this was his first big film. So a lot of times the first-time directors are a little unsure about some of the shots, and so they would call in somebody like me to look over the script and help them, visualize it. So I worked on the storyboards and some concept art for The Strangers, and that ended up being my first, big-time feature film.
After how many years being in the business?
18 altogether.
Didn't take that long. Well, you keep building.
That's it, right. And that's when I started comics, and then up to now. So.
So what's your next project?
I'm working on. Hopefully this year, if time allows, I've got my own film that I'd like to shoot, and I want a storyboard. I've got some of the storyboards done. I also want to draw it as a comic book. I have some publishers that are already interested in the story, so I can pitch it out to different markets. And then I want to take maybe the comic and help sell it. But I would love to have the time to eventually shoot the film.
Would this be your first film?
It would be my first venture into the actual behind the camera, directing stuff. So.
Well, you know your stuff, right? You know all the elements up to it. Why not take that next step?
Right.
And last but not least, let's really quickly, you've been in the business a while. You've worked with a lot of really great people and done a lot of different things. Is there anybody you would love to work with in this industry? Oh,
there's tons. As far as filmmaking, I really enjoy Steven Spielberg. He's a great storyteller. And of course, Tim Burton, his vision is just wacky sometimes, and it really fits with some of the things I like to draw, which is monsters and weird fantasy type stuff. And I really would love to work with George Romero. I'm a big fan of the zombie films that he did. That would be incredible. So
well, definitely Tim Burton and Steven Spielberg would keep you busy.
Yeah, they would.
The storyboards would be busy.
Right, exactly.
Well, great. Well, Craig, it's been a pleasure, and if you're interested in finding more about Craig Gilmore and Film Shots Studios, you can go to your website, which is, why don't you tell our viewers?
www.filmshotsstudio.com.
And you can find out all about what you do and
That's right.
How you can hire this guy, right?
Yeah.
Or work for him.
And see artwork.
Right, great. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
All right.
And we'll be right back with more Second Cinema. Don't go anywhere.